Hi, everybody. This is your professor, Ian Jones, with hopefully a brief video explaining what your fourth project looks like. Hopefully, you've looked at these instructions already, and hopefully, you have some questions. I'm gonna discuss these today. So, the fourth project I'm calling essay number 4. You're the Prof. Cultural Artifact Research Paper. So, it's a research paper to cap off the course. You're gonna be doing some research, finding appropriate sources to study your chosen text, but it's also, you're looking at a cultural artifact. So that's a broad term I'll talk about in a minute. Here's some examples of cultural artifacts: BB-8, Black Lives Matter. There's a picture from Breaking Bad, right? Deflategate, right? So it covers a wide, broad swath of things, very serious things, pop culture shows, controversies, more, I don't know, toys, lighter stuff. Anyways, that's what I'm getting at with this. It's up to you to choose your artifact you want to work on. So let's take a look at the instructions. This is similar to the papers we've done before in that you have a letter to the reader. We'll do peer editing. You have a proposal to turn in and a final draft. Final draft is a bit longer, 5 or more pages. It is a research paper, so you'll be bringing in sources. There's a couple extra components to this essay. There's what I'm calling a pop culture artifact study guide, which I have a separate video for, and a pop culture study guide presentation, which is our final exam, and I have another video for that. So don't worry about those for now, okay? So that leaves us with the usual 4 items that we're doing for the paper, as we've done for the previous 3 papers. So let's go through the instructions. The due dates are here. Obviously, everything is due online now. Take a look at those. Remember, we finish on Wednesday, May 13th. So your final draft and letters to the reader are due on that Wednesday, not the Sunday as usual. Okay, so in this course, we started by reading and writing a lot about code switching and our own identities and how language and behavior patterns help us form our own identities, right? We read some text about that. Then we read a bunch of stuff about the experience of being a refugee in America and around the world, right? The experience of being a refugee. We were reading essays from that collection called The Displaced, edited by Viet Thanh Nguyen, right? And you compared 2 of those essays in your second essay. For our third module, we used the graphic novel The Best We Could Do as a kind of case study, as a longer text looking into being a refugee, the refugee experience. We used it to allow us to go into a deeper reading of a piece of media, right? The essays in The Displaced are all very good, very useful to read, but they're shorter. So we used The Best We Could Do to have a chance to do more extended analysis into one text, looking at this social issue of refugees and immigration. Right? We looked, we also looked at the graphics. We looked at the text. It was a much more complex reading that we did on this. We spent weeks looking at this single text. Okay? So for your last paper, you're the prof. That's right. You've been hired to teach a section of 1A at Chaffey, and you need to find a theme for the semester. So the theme we looked at this semester, and I chose when I set up the syllabus was, the refugee crisis, the experience of being a refugee. So that's why the second and the third unit of the course were devoted to that, right? We read a bunch of essays, and then we read that longer text. So to do this, what you're going to do is choose a pop cultural artifact. So I chose The Best We Could Do, the graphic novel. You're going to choose whatever you want. It can be a book. It could be a graphic novel if you like graphic novels, but it could also be a song. It could be a music video. It could be a music album. It could be a TV show, TV series. It could be a movie. It could be a novel you like. It could be a short story you really like, some poetry you really like. I'm really open to anything you have in mind. It could be, say you're really into graffiti art. It could be the graffiti art of a specific artist. It could be the performance art of somebody, right? Any kind of cultural artifact like that you want to get into that you think is socially or politically relevant, right? You're not restricted by time, language, genre. But we have to be able to, access and learn about your choice, right? So if you choose something super esoteric from the 3rd century BCE or something like that, written in ancient Sumerian, that's not going to be super useful, right? So you want to keep it relevant, you want to keep it useful. Imagine that you're designing this course for Chaffey students. right? So keep that in mind when you're thinking about this. But you should choose something you like and you're familiar with. That's going to help you get engaged, and it's also going to help you do some of the work before you get into it. Okay, so you're going to make a case for the social or political relevance of this political or this pop culture artifact, right? This means that it has a controversial, or that it has a conversation occurring around it already, right? That it's a well-known pop culture artifact and it's stirring up some kind of controversy in its reception. So you might think about those music videos that I posted for week 14, right? Things like "This Is America" by Childish Gambino was a very controversial video, and it stirred up a lot of conversations about race and such, all these kind of big social issues. So you need to think about that in terms of what you choose as well, right? Choose something you like, but choose something that engages or can engage with some kind of social issue. If you want to choose something like Harry Potter, that's fine. You just need to find a way to make it relevant to some kind of social issue. Okay. In your project, you're going to provide background information on the piece, right? How did it appear? How popular was it? And you're also going to give your audience insight to the conversation around your chosen item, right? So the idea here is to use your pop culture artifact as a way into a bigger social issue, like we did with The Best We Could Do, the graphic novel. Okay. You'll include at least 2 works that provide additional information, background theory, or introduce critical responses, right? So that's where the research comes in. And we're going to look at a sample paper in week 15. In this paper, the student chose to work on the Netflix series Jessica Jones. I don't know if anybody's seen it, especially season 1 of Jessica Jones, which is about really touches on the themes of sexual assault and the control of women by men through sexual violence. Right? It really gets into some of this kind of stuff. So, this is how that student approached it, right? Using that pop cultural artifact to talk about this much larger social issue. So basically, you're telling us, so what? Right? Why we should study your chosen pop culture artifact? Justify the work. Justify the work. Why the work you chose is relevant, and explain why we, as consumers of popular culture, should engage with the piece in a particular way. Especially think about this as you're aiming this to Chafee students. Why should Chafee students study your chosen pop culture artifact? Right. Okay. So structure. 5 pages or more, probably more. I have it set into 4 sections. Pardon me. So you're gonna have your introduction. This is my object. This is why we should study it. Blah blah blah. Right. Your introductory paragraph. Get right to your thesis statement, because you're going to spend a couple of paragraphs, summarizing your work and giving a bit of background. You don't need to cover every aspect of the work, as I note here. You only have 5 or 6 pages, so you can't go into super long background, right? That seems like a lot of pages, but really you can't spend 3 pages doing background and do all the rest of the work too, right? So, as I note here, the book, The Best We Could Do, is of course about refugees, but it also touches on gender, race, lots of other topics, right? So you can't cover all of that when you're summarizing and writing about your chosen artifact. You need to really stress what you're getting into, right? When you're summarizing, one of the important things to think about when you summarize things is to emphasize the theme or the topic that you want to analyze later, right? Because good summary is just setting up analysis later on, right? So you can't summarize everything about it, so choose what you want to summarize, okay? You should have your thesis statement. Remember, a thesis statement for a paper like this should include a debatable point, right? You need an argument, not just an observation. The best we could do is about refugees. Yeah, of course it is, right? That's not debatable. I can't argue that it's not about refugees, right? But you need to make an argument. It's about, in the book, T. Boy argues that refugees suffer because of the inherent racism of American culture. Okay, that's a more argumentative point. Okay, right, and it should be a roadmap for the rest of your paper. So then you're gonna have some background, right? So that's your introductory paragraph. Then you want to have some background. Again, brief summary of the plot, character summary if necessary, right? Just focusing on setting up your analysis later, the important aspects of this. Then you want to survey what people have been saying about this artifact. right? Are there reviews and articles about this, right? You should be choosing something that's fairly controversial, that has a reaction to it. So you should be able to find stuff in this section. There are reviews and reactions to the best we could do. So you would survey that in this. So you're going to use some sources. Um, as I note here, you can't cover everything that everybody said about it. So try to choose a couple like representative viewpoints, right? Some people hate it because, some people love it because, right? Just like a couple sources to help you explain to the reader what the general reaction is to your pop cultural artifact, what the reception has been. Okay, don't spend too long here. Again, this is just setting up background more or less, what people have been talking about. And then that's when you get into your summary, right? So as I note here, imagine you're the prof and need to put together your next syllabus and you want a new text and theme to replace the best we could do. Why should your pop cultural artifact be chosen as this replacement? Right? So for this section, you need to use at least two sources that are not reviews or reactions to your artifact, right? So these are texts that are about your larger social issue, right? And that you can bring into conversation with your article, right? So if I were working on the best we could do, maybe I could bring in some of the essays from The Displaced, right? How about the essay "The Parent Who Stays" by Renee Grande, or Reina Grande, sorry. She's talking about the way that sometimes immigration requires somebody to make such a sacrifice for the good of their family that they end up destroying their family, right? This is this is very much one of the things that T. Boy is exploring in The Best We Could Do, the way that fleeing Vietnam to save the family actually in some ways destroyed the family, right? Because everybody was stuck with so much baggage and never really dealt with all the hardship that they went through, that it ended up tearing them apart, right? So that would be a good thing I could bring into conversation here in this section. Okay, so that's what you want to bring in. This is where you bring in your research, other texts, right? And that's your summary section. So that should be like 2-3 pages long, kind of thing, getting into some extra text to help you think about bringing them into conversation, right? And then last paragraph, summarize, go through your main arguments, conclude by arguing about why your artifact is a timely piece to study. Why now, right? In other words, why should we be interested in your pop culture artifact in 2020? Okay, so a timely argument. So you need to use at least 4 research sources in this paper, right? At least 2 for background, as in section 3, right? It's what people have been saying about it, so reviews, reactions to it, and then at least 2 in here, which are kind of supplementary or adjacent kind of things. They're about the larger social issue that you're talking about and how you can use that to get into conversation with your text. Okay. So I want you to use stuff from Chaffee Library Database, right? You must use at least 3 different sources. At least 1 must come from a library database, at least 1 from an ebook, anthology or textbook, right? Probably ebook, and at least 1 from a credible website. You need 4, so you could have 2 from a credible website, and then 1 from each of these, or 2 from a database, and then 1 from each of these. Doesn't matter, but you need to check all these boxes, right, to help you practice your research skills. Okay, so then there's some tips. I'll reiterate, don't spend too much time on summary, right? You want to spend the most time sections 3 and 4, more 4, in fact, right? Trying to do analysis, trying to talk about why this issue is interesting and good and useful to study, and how you can bring in different texts into conversation with each other. Okay, so that's just a brief run through. I'll probably post another video zoning more, or focusing more on this point number 4. This is really the hard part, right? As we get into week 15, I'll try to post another video about this. Please do email me with any questions or concerns in the meantime. Okay, thank you very much. See if I can find the done button.